Welcome back to Learning Partner. So in this video, we are going to talk about local storage example, right? So when we appear for the machine test or any interview, right, after the normal theoretical questions, logical questions, everyone will ask you to perform some coding round, right? Or the machine test, they will provide something, right? So most of the, let's say out of 100%, 70% machine test are normally the CRUD operation. So I mean, forms can be anything like employee form, product form, e-commerce normal application, anything it can be. Scenario can be anything, but just a CRUD application everyone will expect, right? So when someone asks you CRUD application, so there are normally three ways by which they will ask you to complete the CRUD operation. First is using local storage. If that company didn't provide you any API, so you have to do that CRUD operation by storing the data into the local storage, right? Considering local storage as our database. Then second is with API integration. So if you got the API, then it is a little bit easy. What we do, we just design the form, and on button click, we just call that API, right? Third is with JSON file. So this is the way we are going to see in this episode, like how we can do CRUD operation by using JSON file. So when I mean JSON file, we are going to store the JSON file into our asset folder over here. And that we will read by using HTTP client only into our component, and we will try to cover the basic CRUD operation, right? So let's get started. So this is an empty project I have created. So in that, just bootstrap I have added, and that entry I have added in the angular.json. Apart from that, it is a basic empty project. So in app folder, let's create in employee application we are going to cover, and in that we will try to cover two forms. First is the department form, and second is the employee registration form. In employee registration form, we are going to need the department dropdown, right? So inside app folder, let me just create a folder as pages, and inside the pages, I will create my component. So I have created a folder, right click on that folder and open in new terminal, so that our terminal will open onto that particular folder. So ng generate component, let's say departments. Right. So first folder I have created, sorry, components. Or let's not create only one component, that is employee, and we will store the department into our JSON file so that we don't want to waste time. So ng generate component employee registration. Only one folder we are going to create, and in that we will try to cover the basic all CRUD operation. Right, so component is created. Now this particular component I will render by using its selector into my app component. Right, so in the app component I have imported that. Let's run the application now just to see if component is getting loaded properly or not. So I open the new terminal from here, so that our terminal has opened into our parent for a particular project folder. So ng serve, that is my command to run the Angular project. Enter. Now, by the time it runs, we can just create a JSON files in asset folder. So in asset folder, I will just create one JSON file. First file we are going to create is for the departments. So departments.json, right? So in the department.json, we are going to store the array of our department. So let's create an object first, and inside that we can say, let's say data is the first property, and inside that we are going to have array, and array will be of object of array. So let's say department ID, we have to wrap it in a double quotes, :1, comma, department name, sales. This is one object, comma. Let's copy paste. ID will be 2. Marketing. Admin. R&D. Right. So we have 4 departments with some different IDs. So this is just a simple array we have stored into our department JSON file. So first thing, in our employee component, we will try to read this department data in our employee component. Right. So yeah, it is running successfully. So let's localhost 4200. By default, it will run on that port. Yes, so you can see employee registration works is getting displayed. Now, I have just Googled a simple form for employee registration. So you can see this is the form I'm going to use. So let's click on show code. This is just a sample code I'm just copying, and I will paste that over here so that we don't have to waste the time in designing the form. So let's see if forms look, yes. So you can see form is looking proper. Now, here what we need to do on the page load of this employee component, first thing we have to do is read the department file, because we are going to show the department drop down. Let me just copy this. So first name, last name. After that, instead of birthday, we can put our select department. Right. So show select department will be there. Now, so on the page load means on once the component loaded, we have to call the particular department JSON file and get the data and store into a variable, right? Just like the get API. So for that, we first need to implement on init, right? The lifecycle event. So on init, then implements on init, ng on init we have to implement. So we are going to read the JSON file using HTTP client only, so that we can, it will be like we are making the API call, but we won't be actually triggering the API call. We will just simply read the data from the asset folder. So for that constructor, round bracket, we have to create the object of HTTP client. So if we have to use the HTTP client, so in app module, first thing we have to do is in the import statement, we have to add the HTTP client module, right? So let's just add the import. Import which will be from common/HTTP. And here will be HTTP client module. And this will be added into the import section, right? So first thing, if we have to make use of the HTTP client, so first thing we have to do is in app module, we have to add this. So this is done. Let's close this. After that, in employee component, we have to create the object of HTTP client service. HTTP client, right? So this is nothing but dependency injection. So we have injected HTTP client service into our employee registration component. Next thing, let's create a method load departments. Round bracket, curly brackets. So this is the function in which we will be making our call to that particular JSON file. So this dot HTTP dot, it will be get method only, round bracket. Now URL. So in normal API call, we pass the URL, but in this situation, we have to read this particular department file. So the URL will be like, or let's try assets / our particular department file name dot JSON. We have to keep it over here, and then dot subscribe call. Normal API call code will be used over here. Result : any. I'm also not sure if this path will work. Otherwise, we have to add double dot and slash. So let's check it. The debugger, and we have to call this function on ng on end, so that once the component load, this function will be get called. So let's file save all. Let's go over here, inspect the network call. Let's see if we have the API call. Yes, so successfully we have done the API call. So you can see in the response, we have got the data object, and inside that we have got whole array, right? So let's create an array variable department departments colon any array is equal to array, right? Whatever the response we have got from this particular asset file, that we will store into this department. So res.data. As you can see, in result we have got the object, but inside that object in data property we have got our actual data array, right? So in departments we have got the departments, so that we will bind over here in the option. Value will be empty, this will be choose department, then option, and here we have to use our ng for let department of departments, right? So value we need to make it property binding, because in departments array we are going to get the department ID. So value we will bind department ID. Let's see what property we get. Res data, right? So department ID, this is the value key which we will bind it over here, and to display we will be displaying department name dot dept name. This is the field name, right? So let's say and check if we can see the departments in the particular form. So you can see whatever the data we had in our JSON file, that data we have successfully read, and that data we have displayed into our dropdown, right? So first thing is done. Let's the first name, last name, department, gender, email, and the phone number. And this we can say, yeah, we can remove this. Just with the normal field, we will try to cover the scenario. Something is missing, the label is missing. It is coming down. Let's try now. Yeah, so it is looking proper now. Okay, all the things were down only, but let it be. So our form is ready. Now what we need to do, this is like form, but we need to show the list also, right? So again in asset folder, we need to create employee list. So in asset folder, right click, new file, employee dot get dot json. Or let's not add extra dot, it will be like get employee dot json. So now in this JSON, I'm going to store employee list in the again data property only. Right, so fields will be whatever the form field we have, first name, last name, department, gender, email, and phone number. So like that, we will create the properties. First name, colon, Sachin, last name, Indulkar, department, let's say sales, and what else we have, gender, email, and phone number. So gender, email, and phone number. Just the demo phone number I had. So this is a first object. Let me just create some more objects. So I have created some records. You can see all the data is correct. Just I have added department ID because once we click on edit, this data we are going to display, right? So for that department ID I have added, right? So in the employee component now, on the page load, we need to show the list also, right? So let's just create one more div. Let me just copy this thing only, whatever the classes it has. Now we have to show the list over here. Let me format. Here in this particular div, I will be creating list. I will be showing the data into the table. So table, let's add classes, table, border, right? So inside that T head will be there, TR, TH, serial number, the basic thing we are going to show, name. So from the JSON file, we are going to get the first name and the last name, but here we will join them as a full name. Department, then it will be email ID. Right, so these much of things we are going to see. Then we need T body, then TR, and then respective number of TDs. So we have 4 TH over here, so obviously we are going to need 4 TD, right? But currently we have 2 divs, one for the list and one for the form. So let's create a variable that will be responsible to trigger between the views. Is list view colon boolean is equal to by default true. So if this variable is true, we will show the list div, otherwise the form div. Star ng, if this is true, this will be visible, otherwise this, and this will be visible if it is false. Now inside that we will need one button called 12 button. Let's add class btn sm btn success. It will be like show. Okay, here also the interpolation name will be dynamic. So if this variable is true, then we will be displaying what we can say. If this variable is true, so we have to show new button, otherwise list button, right? So let's say because in the table, in the form, we have table also and the form also. So at a time only one thing will be displayed, right? So for this we have created this. So currently we have got the table, but if I click on new, okay, we haven't written the click event, right? So let's write the click event over here. Click event, and I'm not going to create the function because on this click event we are simply changing the value, right? So this equal to not of this. So it is just like a toggle thing. Let's save and check it now. So by default, this variable was true. So we have got new button and the table is visible. If I click on new, so you can see form is visible and the button text is also changed, list. Let's just assign it to the right side, text, and why it is taking so much space? Okay, because we don't have the data. So once we have the data, it will move up, right? So first thing is like, on the page load, we need to call the particular JSON file and get the data and store it into a variable and show that into the table, right? So for that, again, we have to create one more API call, that is load employees, round bracket, curly bracket, this dot http. Again, get method will be there, round bracket, all will be get method only because we are just trying to read the data. Now URL will be assets slash our particular file name, that is get employee.json. It will go over here. Then normal our subscribe call dot subscribe round bracket result colon any, right? So we need one more array, employee list colon any, right? So whatever the response we get, that we are going to store it over here in this variable res.data. On the page load, we need to call this function just like the department. So here we are calling it right? So let's just add a debugger over here also, and let's check if it is working properly. Let's open console. Let's reload the page. Yes, so you can see in the result on data, we have got the data. You can see same data what we have stored in the JSON file, we have successfully read, and that we are going to store into the employee list. So in the employee list, we have got the array. Now this we have to show into the table. So again, let's go back to the HTML. For loop will be on the tr. Let emp off. Right now, first id is like serial number, so we are going to need the serial number. So for that, let sr is equal to index we have to store, and here we just need to interpret. So indexing will normally start with 0, so we have to just make it +1. Then emp dot. Now things what we need to show. So name. So as you can see, we have got first name and the last name, right? So we can make use of the interpolation to just make it join, right? This is first interpolation, then second interpolation will be emp dot the last name only, right? So like this, let me just copy. Then we have department, so that is department field. It will go over here, and the email. So this field go over here, right? So let's save and check. Yes, so you can see we have got the data from the JSON file and we have rendered that successfully into the table. So first task is done, like inside CRUD operation, read operation is done. Next thing is post API. So for post API, just like you might have seen JSON placeholder API. When we hit post API, it doesn't what we can say actually insert the data. It will just API call is success. So just like that structure we have to achieve. So again, we need to create one more file. So that will be post employee.json. Now inside that, we will just return simply API, some static data like data or result true, and message we will be sending employee created successfully, right? So in the post employee, we are returning this particular object. Now on the save method, right? So on this form, we have the save button, right? Submit button. Instead of submit, it will be button. On this save button, on the submit button, we need to call that particular JSON file. So before that, first we need to create the object, right? That we will bind it out to our form. So it will be employee object colon any curly bracket. So let's make use of this object only, but we just don't need the employee. Let's initialize everything. Empty object we have created. Now this employee object we have to bind to our form, but when we bind the particular object to the form, so we need forms model because we are going to bind that using ng model. So to use the ng model, just like HTTP client model, we need the forms model also. So in the import, just write forms module. That's it. Then you can make use of the HTTP client model, ng model. So this object we will bind to our form. So starting from above, so you can see this is the first name. Sorry, here square bracket, round bracket, ng model equal to employee object dot. So employee object dot first name we have to bind, right? So this will go over here just like that. Let me just copy paste, then we will just change the field name so that we will save our some time. Class here also it will go. Okay, so we have two text box, right? Gender, yeah, we have done. That's it. Now we just need to change the properties. So first name we have done, then last name. Now this our particular form is in the form tag, right? So either we can remove that, or let's just remove that because we have to add the name property everywhere. Then that will just increase our video length. So last name is done, then department. So department we will be binding with the department ID. So that will be department ID, then gender. So for gender, we have two radio button, right? So both the places we need to bind that. Just name we have to keep it the same, right? Then value will be, let's say, female, and this will be male, right? Then we have, what is this other? Let me just remove that. We don't need third option. And last one is email, right? So email will go over here. And last one is phone number. So that is phone number. This property we will bind it over here, right? So our whole form is particularly binded. So let's check if we have any error. On click of new, yes, so we don't have any error, right? Now we need to implement the click event. So on this button, we need the click event. So click on create EMP. This is the function we are going to create. So this function will go into our employee component.ts. So after load employee, this function, then, right? So from this function, we need to call over that particular JSON file. So again, this dot HTTP dot. Now we have to insert the data, since we are not making the actual API call, but we have to do the whole structure same. So API call normally we do with the post operation. Now for post, we will have two parameters. First is the URL and second is the object. So this dot employee object will be the second parameter. And asset slash, let's see the post employee URL. We'll go over here, right? Then subscribe call. Now here we will be simply just showing the alert like record got successfully, because there is no mechanism to check like if some validation is there or not, because we are simply calling the JSON file. So if someone asks you to do this now, they cannot expect the whole thing. Here we can just show whatever the response we get. So if you can see in message, we are going to get the data, right? So res dot message we can simply show. Now let's test if it is working fine. Let's add a debugger first. Let's remove this from here and let's put it over here. Now on click of new, we got the form, right? So let's say Virat Kohli department admin female or male. You can see only one option is getting selected because we have added name property same to both the radio button, right? So virat@gmail.com, phone number, right? So now on click of submit, we should get that debugger. Yes. So once I click on submit, you can see I have got the debugger. And in employee object, you can see whatever the data we have filled over there, that data got populated into particular object. So our object is ready, right? Let's add a debugger over here. If I continue, okay, so something is not right now. What it is saying, post employee.json, it doesn't found that. Why? Let me see. Spelling is correct only. It might be possible like post method won't allow it to access. Let's try to make it get. Yeah, so with get only it is allowing. Let me try to search. Can we access JSON file with HTTP client post method Angular? Let's see if it is available. Discuss of the HTTP client. I think no, we cannot do that. Post request example, let's see. They have done it. So URL, okay, with the normal API. No, we want it with the local JSON file. Okay, so let it be. But just for the understanding, we have seen. So same method, like to read the particular JSON file, I think it is not allowed. So this should be your code, right? Instead of get, this will be there, right? But since we are not able to access this particular file, so we're just making it with get, right? Let me just copy and paste it so that you can have for reference. This will be post. And let's just comment this, right? So we need to send the object and the URL. Now it will be get. Let me remove this. Let's try to hit directly submit. Continue, continue. Yes, so you can see employee got created successfully, message we have got. So in normal application, when we save or create any record, we normally call the get API, right? So that also we have to take care. So this function, again, we have to call over here once we successfully save the data, so that new records will be successfully loaded. See, we are dealing with the JSON file. So data is not going to change. Data will be static, but we need to create whole operation, right? So get operation is done, create operation is done. Now we need to do delete operation and the update operation, right? So in the HTML, we need to add the edit button. So let's add th over here. That will be action. In td, again, two buttons we are going to need. First is for edit and second is for delete. This will be edit button and one more button will be needed for the delete. Right. So on click of edit, what we need to do in the in this particular object, we have got whole data. So there is no point to make the API call or read the particular JSON file. So we can simply get the data from this, right? This is the object, right? So let's create click event on edit and we need to pass the particular object. So that is EMP. Let's create this function. And from HTML, we are sending an object that we need to receive the same object over here. Item :any. And this, whatever the object we have got, that we need to assign it to this object. So this dot employee object is equal to item. And we need to make that variable true, which is list variable false, so that our form will be visible. This dot is list is equal to false, so that our form UI will be visible. So let's add the debugger over here and let's check if it is working properly. So our edit one operation is completed, right? So if I click on edit, I'm clicking on Rahul Dravid record. So if I click on edit, so you can see in the item, we have got whole object, right? That same object we are assigning to our employee object, and then we are displaying the form. So you can see that whole form got pre-populated, just like the edit call we normally do with the API call. Then we just need to make the update call. Now, if I click on edit, instead of this submit, or let's change that button to the update. So that we can decide, because once we click on the edit in the list object, okay, employee ID we haven't created, right? So let it be that, because we can add a check, like if employee ID is 0, then we can show the submit button. If employee object object.id is not 0, then we can show the update button, right? So if you in the get employee, if you add the employee ID, then you can take care of that. But I haven't done, so I will skip that. The next button is submit only, right? So submit call will be same like this. You just have to create one more put employee call, and you need to call that just like the post thing, just like this only, you need to call that another file. Now we need to take care of the delete functionality. So click on delete, and we need to send the particular object, right? So let's create this function. Again, we are going to get the object, right? So again, same thing, right? You need to create one more delete.json file, and you need to make the call as it is, right? So this is how we can complete the basic CRUD operation with JSON file. So the thing is, we just need to create that much JSON file into our here, like get employee, post employee, put employee, delete employee, and we just need to make the API call. Use means we just need to call that particular file using HTTP client. Like this, I have done, right? So hope this video was helpful to you, right? In next video, I will be trying to cover the same thing with local storage, so that you will have idea like how it was with JSON file and how it is with local storage. So that's it with this current video. Please do subscribe if you have not, and please do like my videos.